Welcome. We're back. It was about a month ago we last talked to Liz Wagner about Israel and what's going on with American-Israeli relations. And a lot has happened since then. And some hostages have been released. So there's been some good news. And there are peace talks going on. So that's good news. And so hopefully that things are moving in the right direction. Liz Wagner, as you may remember, is a Jewish activist. I'm not going to say with whom to preserve privacy, but I met her years ago online through a Zoom call, actually, with the Jewish Leadership Project out of Boston, and whatever their initiative was didn't happen, but it may have happened up there, but didn't happen to her. I'm grateful to meet Liz, and we certainly got a friendship out of it, and we played golf together, so now we're golfing buddies. And it's a very nice Florida thing. And today I think we're going to talk about one local development and two American developments. We both went to a talk by Paulina Luna at actually my synagogue in Clearwater. And I won't say what it is because they said no media allowed, so I'm not going to talk about the details, but it was co-sponsored by AIPAC, which I think I'm allowed to say. And she talked about her trip to Israel, which I think I'm allowed to say, but we're not going to talk about any details. But I wanted to talk about what did Liz get as a takeaway from this without going into details.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I'll just say that Ana Paulina Luna is a congresswoman for our district in Florida, in Washington, D.C. And it was a very nice program. She had been on a trip to Israel. It was a bipartisan group of Congress people who went to Israel. And I found, I had known that she was supportive of Israel because I had read, she had an editorial in Newsweek Online that was very pro-Israel. So, but I had never seen her speak before in public, and I wanted to hear what she had to say. And, what she talked about that night really was focused on the trip she had taken. And you could tell that, she believes in Israel. She believes in the state of Israel, and she believes in it, I think, from a political perspective and as an ally of the United States, but also I believe she believes in it because she's Christian, and that means something to her, and Israel means something to her as a Christian. That's what I got from it. What else? I'm trying to remember. I mean, she talked about her experiences speaking with soldiers, speaking with some public leaders there. I believe she visited the Nova festival site and some of the kibbutzim that were attacked. So, it was a very informative trip for her, and it was good that I was glad to see that she had gone.
And I was glad to see that she came and spoke to our synagogue, which I think most of the members are Jewish liberals. And in fact, it was a relatively small turnout because I think some people didn't come because she's a Republican, basically, and a Trump supporter. But I think it was very good to have her there. And I was glad she came there. And I was glad that she got a good crowd.
She did get a good crowd, even though it might have not been, maybe because your congregation has a lot of liberal Jews, so maybe it wasn't, packed wall to wall, but there were a lot of people there. I mean,
there were a lot of people there, so I thought it was a good turnout. And the other interesting thing, not to go into what she said, but I realized when we were there must have been at least 6 police cars. They blocked off the front of the parking lot, flashing lights. You had to come in the back, high security, and I think she must have had 2, maybe she even had 4 congressional security guards. And there was a bit of tension. And apparently there had been threats of protests prior from various anti-Israel groups. And there was only one lone protester actually way at the edge of the parking lot saying, "We want our town hall meeting." They weren't even making it about Israel because I guess in Pinellas County that wouldn't go over. But I realized that even though the protesters don't show up, the threat of protest costs a lot of money. It costs the synagogue money for their security. It costs the sheriff and the city money for their security, and it costs Congress money for their security.
Yeah.
So it actually, even the threat when it's not realized, is a big drain and a negative, and it's a cost and it's an attack.
Yes.
And people don't realize that. So you can go and organize an anti-Israel thing on any college campus. You don't need extra security. Nobody's going to break it up. Nothing's going to happen to you. But if you come to speak in favor of Israel to an event sponsored by AIPAC, suddenly it's like, World War III. And it's wrong, especially in the United States of America, for people who supposedly believe in free speech to create such a air of intimidation, threat, and menace around something that was really fairly routine. When I was growing up, Congress people coming to the synagogue to talk about their trip to Israel, that was normal in America. Okay. It's like somebody going to a Catholic church and talking about their trip to Ireland or Italy. It was normal, the
Yeah.
Vatican for the papal audience. It was normal. There's
Right.
nothing unusual about this. Going to England and going to see Canterbury Cathedral at an Anglican church or Episcopalian, they're called here. It's normal. Going to Salt Lake City, if you're going to a Mormon church, it's normal. And to make this something so fraught and so fearful, and that I think scares people away too. It's wrong, and it should be condemned by the American Jewish leadership. And in that line, I see you agree with me. I don't want to let you go because I want to move to, you found a very interesting essay you called my attention to online on the Substack of Hussein Abubakr Mansour, who's actually an Arab. He's an Egyptian.
Mhm.
And he used to work at Emet, which was a pro-Jewish group and pro-Israeli in
A
Washington,
lobbying group. Yeah.
and a lobbyist. They're real lobbyists, and they had a broadcast. I used to see him speak. I wanted to interview him on YouTube, but I guess having a small audience like he's not,
Yeah.
up
He's a
for it.
brilliant
But
guy. Brilliant
yeah,
guy.
I thought he was really smart. And, what I like is he's an Arab. He was brought up hating Israel and Egypt. That's exactly, somebody goes, wait a minute, Israel's not the problem. And I thought that was really good. But in any case, he's written something saying the universities are a problem. And it just came out in a Substack. And it's called The Rise and Fall of the Whore of Babylon. I don't know if you can read it there, but
Yes.
you called it to my attention. And he's basically saying these universities are nothing but accomplices, accessories, harboring terrorists and their supporters, organizing aid and support to terrorists who are out to destroy the United States and Israel. Tell me, what did you think of the best points he made?
Well, the biggest thing for me was how he deconstructed the whole system that the left has put together. I mean, he takes it apart piece by piece and shows you how they created this system where like he calls it a conveyor belt of political activists who they're also they've taught the university system really it's a conveyor belt of like managerial class people who will then go out and protect those parts of society and keep those parts of society going. Well, meanwhile, politically, they've really kind of monopolized things. The left has for certain political viewpoints, and now the United States is really kind of stuck. We have to free ourselves from that monopolization um, by this system that the left put together through using the universities.
Yeah, and
Journalists
his
are
point,
part of it.
they're gatekeepers.
Yes.
You can't get through to a lot of jobs. I mean, some of it is due to civil rights law. You can't use an IQ test or even an old-fashioned civil service test in many cases. just to see if someone can do a job in order to hire them. So the university degree has become the requirement for a lot of things that didn't even used to be. I mean, journalists didn't used to go to college. Okay,
Right,
now
right.
they all go to college.
Yes,
I mean, a businessman didn't have to go to college. Now
right.
they all have to have MBAs.
And they all get
It,
indoctrinated with the same ways of thinking. And in fact, he was saying that, and a lot of, you know, wealthy and influential people from all over the world end up going to these American universities, and they bring back those ways of thinking too.
oh, well, we can go farther. They're selected. Look, the American university has been controlled by the left, as we've discussed, at least since the 1970s. I mean, maybe a brief moment in the McCarthy era, it wasn't controlled by the left. But since the 1970s, it's gone left, left, or farther left, so that it's now controlled by the extreme left, if not by the Communist Party, who knows, at least by communist seeming groups, and even further left than communist, anarchist, nihilist, who
Islamist.
knows, Islamist. Although we think, many of us, that that's a marriage of convenience, just like it was in Iran,
Oh,
to
of course.
topple the
Of
order,
course.
and then
Yeah,
they'll fight it out.
they
But
will.
be that as it may, um, the universities, and I can say this as someone who used to teach in a university, a couple, in several universities, uh, have over the last 50 years driven out, created a hostile environment for anyone who is not a leftist of some kind, or
Yeah.
an Islamist. But you have to be an Islamic leftist. You can't be an anti-communist Islamist and be there. I mean, I think the people doing the selecting, and I served on, I was on a Fulbright committee in, was it in Moscow? I guess so, because they were short of people, or maybe it was Uzbekistan, wherever it was, and we had people come in from interviews, and I was trying to push my people. And there at that time, under the Bush administration, I don't know if I got them through because I never heard the end of it, but it's pretty clear people are inviting people to apply to get their people in through the system. So you've got a very elaborate network of cadre, you might call them, who work together internationally through the International. I don't know if we're in the fourth international or the fifth international, or if it's headquartered in Beijing or Havana or wherever. But you're laughing because you know what I'm talking about. But everybody pretends this is so spontaneous and how this happened. It was deliberate.
Right.
All of these things, these trainings for white supremacy, or for sexual transgenderism, it's to drive out non party line people who go, wait a
Yep.
minute, I can't follow this, I can't do this, out, you know. So the
Yep.
only people who can get through the filter are the true loyalists. I imagine some are true believers and some are just careerists, you know. I'll say anything and do anything to get tenure, you know. And but by now there is nobody there, and there's no way to do anything outside of the party line. So he's right. But I don't think it's just these foreigners who are giving ideas to people. I think the foreigners are selected by the people who want backup for their
Mhm.
own plans, which are, you know, we all lived through the 60s and 70s. They just didn't complete the job, you know. Burn, baby, burn, bring this sucker down. We know all the slogans and the sayings, and they were for the PLO then, they're for Hamas now. There's no, not a distinction without a difference. And the left was, I can say this because I was in something called the Young Socialist Alliance when I was very young, and doing anti-war protests against the Vietnam War. And then suddenly go in like to the headquarters and there's a big picture of Yasser Arafat, you know, up there with Che Guevara and everyone else. And it's like, wait a minute, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I drank the Kool-Aid. I remember saying at that time, this is in like 1970 something, Israel is a Zionist colonialist settler state exploiting the Palestinians. Okay, so that's 50 years old. They're saying
Wow.
it's still America KKKA. You know, they just
Yeah.
talk in one of these articles I read about some lecturer from, I don't know, Lebanon or somewhere who they're trying to deport for being a terrorist supporter. I remember writing America KKKA. You know, these are not new things. These are the same old party line. And actually, you can see the roots of it. It's been documented by scholars in the Soviet anti-Zionist campaign of the 1970s.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you point out subsequently, and I want you to talk about this, the Durban
Oh, the Durban
conference.
conference?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh my God, that was terrible.
Well, tell us, what did they decide at the Durban conference?
Well, now this was the UN conference in Durban, South Africa. It was the conference against racism and xenophobia in the summer of 2001. It was actually, the conference ended like September 10th, and then September 11th, they blew up the World Trade Center.
Aha, more than a
That's when
coincidence.
that conference was. And the thing is about that conference, and there were kind of two, the way I understand it, two conferences going. There was the UN conference against racism, and then there was like a separate thing of NGOs. And I think the thing of NGOs was especially bad. That's where they were handing out all kinds of, pamphlets, really hateful pamphlets. Jews felt really unsafe there, and in fact, the U.S. Group that was there was going to go there with Colin Powell. He was overseeing that. They pulled out of the conference because it ended up being so anti-Semitic and hateful against Israel that they just said, we're not going to do that. Israel pulled out. And what happened there, that's when they really unveiled the new strategy, which was, in 1994, they had brought down apartheid in South Africa, and now they had a template. So now it was time to accuse Israel of being an apartheid, and that's where that started. That was the great unveiling of the new fact that Israel allegedly is an apartheid regime. And so that was at that UN conference. That's what that really comes from.
And the point of this is that they were successful in bringing down the government of South Africa, replacing it with what is de facto a communist front government. And they want to do the same thing with Israel.
Yes, they now had a template for this is how we take down a democratic, South Africa was not a democratic, but using the smear of apartheid because, obviously,
Pro-Western. It was
yeah,
pro-Western. It was not
pro-Western.
democratic, but it
It
was
was not
pro-Western.
democratic. A pro-Western government using the smear of apartheid. This is how we do it, and so and they've been just relentlessly whipping, Israel
Well,
with
they've actually gone farther because they've now gone from apartheid to
genocide. Yeah,
genocide,
yeah,
which
that's the
is
new one.
a little stronger charge.
Yeah, well, they
Uh,
always,
uh,
find something else.
right, and so now it's genocide. Self-defense equals genocide,
Right.
and paradoxically, the announced aim of Hamas, which is the genocide, the mass extermination of the Jews of Israel, is now self-defense. So
Yeah. And
it's
human
really
rights.
amazing. What?
They're a human rights society, Hamas.
They're human rights
They're just
society,
fighting for the
exactly.
human
Human
rights of the
rights means
Palestinians.
kill all the Jews or
Yeah,
drive them into the sea.
yeah,
Now that said, I mean, we can laugh at it, but unfortunately, many people in Ivy League institutions have fallen for this.
yes,
And like we can just look at the most recent headlines. Fascinating. This is just from March 25th. Oh, no, this came out March 19th. 2,400 Jewish scholars say not in our name on arrest of Palestinian activist. And this is Mahmoud Khalil. It's a letter. I'll refer to that later. But this is from a religious news service, Religion News. The letter declared that its signers will not collaborate with the Federal Immigration Enforcement or the Anti-Defamation League, which, by the way, used to be a pretty left-wing organization itself, and in my opinion, not a big friend of Israel or the Jews, which supported the arrest of Columbia University protester Mahmoud Khalil. And they said it's on the pretext of combating anti-Semitism. Okay, so then we saw, this is in the Yale Daily News, which I'll hold up for you so you can see. Yale Daily News: Jewish Yale faculty signed letter denouncing Trump's attack on pro-Palestine dissenters. And not to be outdone, the Harvard Crimson has dozens of Jewish faculty signed statement denouncing arrest of Mahmoud Khalil. And then they have the letter, which was a little hard to find, from concerned Jewish faculty and staff of the Boston area, not in our name, which you can see here. It's a Google Doc, and it does indeed have 2,600 signatures. And it says, we are united in denouncing without equivocation anyone who invokes our name and cynical claims of anti-Semitism to harass, expel, arrest, or deport members of our campus communities. Now, it's interesting because I don't see them protesting the harassment, expulsion, arrest, or deportation of Jews who are pro-Israel on campus. So that gives you a little clue that this may not be a good faith effort. They say it's part of the Christian nationalist agenda. And President Trump exploited the Hebrew language to say shalom. Shalom means peace, okay?
Right.
It means peace. Trump is trying to bring peace. He ran as a peace candidate. He's involved in peace talks in Ukraine and in Israel, Gaza. He wants peace. He said he wants peace. In the last term,
the Post said
there was
shalom,
no war.
Shalom Mahmoud. It was goodbye, Mahmoud. Shalom.
Well, we don't know.
Means
Maybe
hello and
it's
goodbye.
hello or goodbye. Yeah, we don't know. It might mean peace, Mahmoud. Be peaceful. Go peacefully. Go in peace. Go in peace. Go back to Algeria or wherever it is you were brought here from in peace, you know? And that's fine. Nobody, in other words, he could get on the plane tomorrow and go home in peace. No one would bother him. There's no problem. So I think that's also sort of interesting. So anyway, they are calling on university leaders to devote institutional resources to free Mohammed Khalil and defend any other community member targeted by the Trump administration. Now, I didn't know personally that Mahmoud Khalil, since they say our name, was a member of the Jewish community. That's news to me. So who do they really think their community is? American Jews or Hamas?
Well,
I think it's pretty clear their community is leftists,
yes.
both Arab and Israeli and whatever. Then democratize university governance by enabling faculty, staff, and students to shape institutional budgetary policy and other responses to the Trump administration. This, by the way, is very old. I was involved in the student life. It was always get your students on the board of trustees of the university so they can give more money to leftist organization. I mean, it's like pure self-dealing. Cease any voluntary collaboration with federal immigration enforcement. That's kind of interesting. Reject the dangerous narrative that pro-Palestinian advocacy in which many Jews have participated is presumptively anti-Jewish. Sort of interesting because Hamas says it's anti-Jewish, but why should we believe them? Right. Terminate all collaboration with other organizations such as the Anti-Defamation League. 5 minutes ago, their best friend, that smear our students.
No, they've been trying to get rid of the ADL for years.
Oh, okay. Oh, even now that it became more leftist.
Even before, I mean, since October 7th, Jonathan Greenblatt has really, moved over, and not been so cozy with his erstwhile partners on the left there. But even when he was trying to be cozy, where they had to change the definition of racism on the ADL website because it was such a ridiculous, if you remember that some years ago. They were still trying to get rid of the ADL because they can't have an organization that protects Jews from anti-Semitism, just like that's why they fight the definition of anti-Semitism so hard, because they're trying to normalize anti-Semitism. They're trying to make everybody feel okay about hating Jews.
You know, that's an excellent point. And the other thing, though, why is it then the ADL won't come out publicly and stop supporting the persecution of J6 protesters? For example, they're still working in a civil action against the January 6th protesters to get a civil judgment against them. Why don't they just drop that and concentrate on their main job, which is to protect Jews? They justify it by saying, well, they're white nationalists. Well, they weren't white nationalists. They were Trump supporters, okay? President Trump is now supporting Israel. President Trump is defending Jews against anti-Semitism. President Trump is the best friend American Jews have and Israelis have. The ADL has no business working with the other side to bring him down. But that's my view. You don't have to agree with that. But I'm glad to hear you say that. So no matter what they do, even these token efforts to get the J6 people, that's not going to make the left love them anymore.
No, nothing.
Okay.
No.
Okay. And then they say affirmatively defend every university member's lawful right to engage in First Amendment protected activity without fear of internal or external punishment. It's funny about that because I don't see them defending men who say, "Hey, you look good in that dress, honey," from getting fired for sexual harassment. Work collectively. So you're laughing, but you know it's true. Work collectively across institutions to resist the Trump administration's feigned concerns about Jewish safety, to smear, isolate, and defund our university. Feigned concern.
I know.
First of all,
They have a lot of nerve.
is it real or isn't it? Are Jews feeling unsafe in their safe zones or whatever they call it? Let's make it a safe space, except it's not very safe when you're going to be spit on, punched, harassed, yelled at. You're going to have your classrooms invaded, your study halls invaded, your dormitories invaded. You're going to be essentially kidnapped and held as prisoner for long periods of time by chanting mobs against your will. I wouldn't call that a safe space. I wouldn't call that something that people are imagining either, and that is not true. So what we have here is a classic, well, people call it a PSYOP, psychological warfare, but it's a propaganda campaign, as you said. And the goal is simply, as you said, normalize anti-Semitism the same way they've normalized anti-Christian and anti-white, and set up the reign of terror. And people who want to keep their jobs in a university will then go, well, I better make nice to these people.
Right.
And at Harvard, I want to keep my Harvard job. They're running the place. I better sign this denunciation, just like in the Stalin period, people would sign denunciations of their friends, of Israel, whatever it took. I don't want to go to the gulag. I don't want to lose my job. I don't even want to lose my apartment. I mean, in the Brezhnev era, they wouldn't kill you, but you'd lose your apartment. You'd lose your food coupons. You'd lose, your heat coupons. You'd lose everything, and you couldn't work, and people would have to sort of help you. So, they can make life very bad for people who don't go along with the program unless they're decisively defeated. So I think that's the state we have now. Now, my favorite issue is, what are Jewish organizations doing about this? Like, I haven't seen a groundswell of organizing on the other side. Thousands of signatures to support President Trump's deportations, thousands of signatures to support President Trump's defunding of these universities, thousands of signatures to say groups like this got to be kicked off campus, and they're enemies of the Jewish people, and they should be shunned, expelled, investigated as accomplices to terror, just like the German-American Bund was an accomplice to the Nazi Party. I haven't seen that from Jewish organizations.
No, and
I haven't seen it. I've seen the statement from AIPAC, but I haven't seen Green. What's his name again? I don't want to get it wrong. What's his last name?
Oh, Hussein Abubakr
No,
Mansour.
I know his name. The head of ADL.
Oh,
The,
Jonathan Greenblatt.
thank you. I didn't want to say
Yeah.
something wrong.
Oh.
I haven't seen him stand shoulder to shoulder with President Trump at a press conference and thank him for his efforts. I haven't seen AIPAC go out and get a resolution in Congress, Democrat and Republican bipartisan support for President Trump. I haven't seen the Conference of Presidents of major Jewish organizations buy a full-page ad in the failing New York Times, as Donald Trump says, saying, "God bless you, Donald Trump, for standing with the Jewish people in our hour of need."
Mhm.
How do you explain this?
Well, I mean, some of it, like AIPAC, AIPAC's mission is really just to promote whatever Israel's policy is to promote Israel's policies in the United States in the halls of Congress. So I kind of feel like they don't get involved in it. It's not really their wheelhouse. And but
Do
some
you
other
think that's honestly
organizations,
Israel's policy to make every American campus into a Hamas recruiting station?
well,
You
you
think
know,
that that's something Israel would want? Do you think Israel wants
yes,
Hamas terrorizing Jewish students?
no, I mean, they can get behind it, but it may not be something they're going to organize. Maybe the American Jewish Committee or
Okay, what
I
about
don't know.
them?
I don't
What
know.
about the American
B'nai,
Jewish Committee,
B'nai
the
B'rith
American
or
Jewish
some,
Congress, the neighbor? I mean, how many Jewish organizations do we have?
yeah. Um, so,
What is?
unfortunately,
I don't even know the answer. Maybe we'll find out in the comments below. What is the Jewish Leadership Project doing to support President Trump on this?
yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Ex-
they were trying to move Jewish organizations to do stuff like this, and it hasn't, it, maybe it's worked a little tiny bit. Maybe that's a little bit why the ADL has, stepped up its activity to protect Jews because they did get pressured by the Jewish Leadership Project. I mean, they waited until October 7th. It was after that. But we do need the Jews. Unfortunately, in America, the Jews are still stuck. It's like, I feel like the Jews, I mean, there was the Holocaust. That was traumatic enough for, the Jews of Europe lived through that. Some of them came here, but American Jews, the New York Times wasn't reporting on that story. So American Jews didn't really, have the strongest organized response to it. And then, 3 years later, the Arabs decide, oh, we're bringing the party down here, and, Israel declared its sovereignty and the Arabs said, oh, we're going to bring the party down here and we're going to try and wipe out the Jews here in the Middle East. And they've been trying to do that ever since. So, uh, the UN should have crushed the Arab war against Israel. It should have been seen as just a remnant of the Nazi party. They were literally Nazi collaborators and Nazis themselves who got that stirred up and organized that attack in 1948. Then after the war was over, instead of really crushing that, they then created UNRWA, the UN Works and Relief Agency, which has, as Israel has shown since the October 7th attacks, that UNRWA was, has been educating, indoctrinating Arab children since 1948 to hate Jews, to hate Israel. They were never taught to want peace. Um,
And
uh,
there you have it. And
there
UNRWA.
you have it. And then
Wait,
you've got the political left, and then you've
let's
got
carry this further. Who did Muhammad Khalil work for before coming to Columbia University to organize Hamas actions?
yeah, he worked for
He
UNRWA.
worked for UNRWA.
Yeah, yeah.
And apparently he was cleared by British intelligence. which,
Yes.
for those of us who remember a little bit about the British in the Middle East, they've not always been pro-Jewish or pro-Israel. There was the White
No.
Paper, there was Glub Pasha.
Yes.
They
They
opposed
helped the
rescuing Jews
Arabs.
from Hitler. They helped the Arabs.
They
They
helped the
wanted the
Arabs in
oil,
the
you can say,
1948
but
war.
maybe there were plenty of Israeli anti-Semite. I mean, there probably are Israeli anti-Semites too, but
But
plenty of
British,
British
yes,
anti-Semites in the Foreign Office, and
yes.
so
Yeah,
I think
Lawrence of Arabia was one of them.
well, I don't know about him. He might
Yeah,
or might not have been, but
yes, he was.
since that time, since a lot of Jews looked to Lawrence of Arabia in terms of nationalism. You had Arab nationalism and Jewish nationalism, and they were going to
Yeah,
work together and kick the Turk out, and they'd be big friends because the enemy of my enemy is my friends, right? And they had the famous
yeah, yeah,
letter from King Saud, and
yeah.
there were Arabs fighting with the Irgun. Okay, so who knows? But
Hmm.
whether Lawrence of Arabia is guilty or not, I think the fact of the matter is we can safely say Glub Pasha, who
Hmm.
was a British officer who led the Jordanian army in 1948 to destroy Israel,
Yes.
was. Now, England changed in 1956, but they wanted their canal back. So, but the point is, there are no permanent enemies and no permanent friends in any of this. That's the bottom line. That's why President Trump saying shalom is correct. That's why the people defending Mohammed Khalil are wrong. Um, let's wrap up. What
Mhm.
would you say to me if I said, well, this Anna Paulina Luna event at my synagogue, where a fair portion of people didn't even come to hear, but many did come.
Yeah, I don't
It
think you should
shows
say that. There were a
that
lot of people there.
it was more than I expected. Shows that the non-Jews are better than the Jews when it comes to defending Israel and Jews from anti-Semitism. What would you say to that?
Well, these days it's a little embarrassing because, I've seen Christians who are very vocal and outspoken, and they're not distracted by leftist bullshit politics trying to rationalize hate for Israel, um, and trying to accommodate what is clearly um, a non-existent Arab Palestinian uh, peace group. That it just doesn't exist. They don't want peace. They want to
Now
get
let's
Israel.
let's use that as a segue to a point we discussed after the Anna Paulina Luna event. Uh, and we can't talk about what she said, but I think we can talk about what you said. You asked a question, and you said if there are people in Congress saying there should be no Israel, wouldn't the right position to take in response to that say, well, if you feel that way, our position is there should be no Palestinian state? And could you expand on that?
Yes, well, yeah. I mean, I think it's obvious now that the whole idea of a Palestinian state was a fantasy, um, a desperation of Israelis. I mean, the Palestinians, the whole I mean, the whole thing was just a strategy from the start to get rid of Israel. That's all it ever was among the Palestinians themselves. It was just a strategy for undermining Israel, getting land and using that land to attack Israel. That's all it's ever been. And the Israelis were desperate. They thought they could negotiate some kind of peace by trading land with the Arabs and there being a Palestinian state. And now, since October 7th, it is more than obvious that this is just a pipe dream. It will never happen. All they want is to get rid of Israel. And so, yes, Israel and American Jews and Jews all over the diaspora should now be saying, we're done here. We tried to make peace. Israel tried to make peace. It's obvious the Arabs don't want peace. The Arabs, 400 million Arabs over, like 12 million, I don't know, square miles of territory, Arab territory, but they can't, for some reason, 9,000, less than 9,000 square miles of territory for a Jewish state just is an impossibility. It's like the elephant is terrified of the mouse. It's like just a tiny little sliver, not even all of our ancient indigenous land, just a tiny sliver is too much for them. And they just kill people. They just keep killing Israelis over this. And it's now time for Jews to say, because unless we start saying it, nobody else can say it for us. Okay? If Israel is dumb enough at this point to keep saying, "Oh, we're going to make a deal for peace. We're going to trade land for peace." I'm sorry. I have to tell you, I'm sorry. You Israelis, you're crazy. You're fools. You're going to lose your country if you keep doing this. And you have to just come out and declare to the world, you know what? Gaza, Judea and Samaria, all of it was part of the mandate for Palestine, and it was the San Remo conference agreements gave us this territory, ironclad agreements. And you know what? After trying, for 30 years to trade land for peace, that you illegally invaded and occupied for 19 years. We tried to trade it back, though. We were going to give some back to you for peace, and you didn't do it, and you haven't done it for 80 years. You've just been trying to kill us. Now we're done. We're not trading any land. We're asserting our rights to the territory. It was our rights all along, but we just said we were willing to discuss trading it with you, but now we're not. Now we know you're not serious, you're liars, and you kill us. So now we're done. This is Israel, and Israel, if it wants to declare its boundaries, say what your borders are, Golan Heights, all of Jerusalem, this is Israel. And say it. You have to say it. Israelis have to say it. And if Jews in the diaspora will back Israel up, instead of being fools, and trying to accommodate these people who just want to kill us. And now they've exported their Jew hatred to the United States, to every place else. Did this do us any good to stick with a left that has just been caving in more and more over the years, caving in and trying to justify what is really Arab and Muslim supremacist values and beliefs? Has this been good for us? Is that good for the Jews? No, it's not. And now you have to stop. White supremacy was no good for America, and Arab and Muslim supremacy is no good for the Arab and Muslim world or the rest of the world. It has to stop. And we have to stop, thinking that we're going to make friends if only we would accommodate more. You could never accommodate them enough to satisfy them. That's it. You'd have to give up Israel, and that's our indigenous land, and we don't have to. That's it. Learn to live with us.
I agree with you. I think one of the interesting things is that there are many Christians who would agree with you in America. There probably are Muslims like Hussein, Abubakr, Mansour who would agree with you. But
I don't know.
I don't know if there are American Jews on the liberal side who would ever agree with you, because they actually would rather have their identity as leftists, because they see the left is good and the right is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And they would be willing to sacrifice. I mean, I know people, relatives of mine, who moved out of Israel after October 7th. They said, "Oh, if Israel is run by Netanyahu, it doesn't deserve to exist." So, this is the mentality. So instead of taking the famous saying by Hillel, "If I am not for myself, who will be for me?"
Right.
Which they always seem to forget. That's premise one. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, who am I? That's fair. And if not now, when? They drop that. And it's like they just focus on, if I'm only for myself, but you must be for yourself. and for
was.
everybody else. There's no
Yes,
contradiction. You can be
yes,
for a strong Israel and for a good life for the Arabs. When
yes.
President Trump says he wants Gaza to be a beauty spot and a resort, essentially that's what he's saying. Remember, he may have one Jewish son-in-law, but he has another Lebanese son-in-law, and he's perfectly balanced in his family. That's a classic role for a fixer to have. And yeah, let's make a deal. And the other side doesn't want to make a deal. Okay, then they won't have anything. You get nothing. No Palestine. If you make
Mhm.
a deal, you might get something. That's the why I support President Trump. And even you wanted to bring up this Witkoff going on and saying things on Tucker Carlson, who I have my questions about, I have to say, there probably is a method to the madness just based on negotiating strategy. I mean, I'm willing to give him benefit of the doubt because the recognition of Jerusalem, I had a friend, actually a cousin of my wife, and he um, Israeli American. And he was mad at Trump in the first term, saying, "Oh, he said he would recognize Jerusalem. He's not recognizing Jerusalem. He's never going to recognize Jerusalem. We've been betrayed." But in the end, he recognized Jerusalem. So I think he'll get there eventually.
I hope
Anyway,
so. Witkoff
that's
made
my
me nervous.
roundup. If only every American Jewish leader were like you, I would sleep easier. But I think we should wrap it up on this note,
Yes.
and then we can come back in a month or a week or when the next development happens.
Okay.
And it's been a pleasure. And have a happy Passover if I don't talk to you before then. And our viewers should have a happy Passover. And to our Christian viewers, have a happy Easter.
Yes.
And, I guess we'll wrap it up with that. Is
Okay.
that okay? Take care.
Good to talk to you. All right.
All right. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.